and welcome to Juicy Scoop. Well, I have a friend of mine here that I've known for many years. I feel like we met on the red carpet, but then I know you through Ross Matthews because you've worked with him for so long. I've got Nikki Boyer here, so I know many of you might know her from red carpet.
From getting around, you know.
Yeah, she's been around the block a few times in this Hollywood crazy world. And she has a new podcast coming out with Wondery called Dying for Sex.
Yeah.
And when I heard about it, I was really excited for you. And I also thought it was such an interesting, juicy topic, which is basically, unfortunately, your best friend, was diagnosed with cancer and really changed her life.
Yes.
As far as she decided to use the precious time that she may or may not know how much she has left as she battles this to fuck.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye, everybody. I mean, that's really it.
But to have a lot of different sexual experiences with different people.
Yeah.
And so I listened to it, and we're going to share it at the end of this interview. And it's the whole series, which is a 6-part series, is available February 12th. But in listening to the first episode and everything, I was like, wow, because I've often thought about, it's different. I've had, I've never had anyone, fortunately, that's my age that's really close to me. I've certainly had friends that have battled different variations of cancer, and I've prayed for them, and I've thought about them, and I've texted them, and I've seen them, but never the close relationship you had. This is truly like your best friend.
Yeah.
And that you really spent so much time with. And I mean, that's a challenge. And I think that's hard. Like, I was like, oh my God, like was it ever too much being like her main best friend going through this?
Great question, actually, because when she first got diagnosed and had her double mastectomy and she was in remission, I was like, all right, we got this. And I always very much felt like it was a we thing, even though, she has a husband, I have a family, we had our separate lives, but we always were very connected in the way of our health because my father passed away from cancer. My brother dealt with 10 years of cancer. So she was always sort of there for me in my family's cancer. And then when she got diagnosed, oddly enough, you'd think I'd dive right in and be like, oh, I know how to do this. I was still like, what does this mean? I don't understand this. It was like I almost couldn't absorb it that someone my age was diagnosed with breast cancer.
And you guys are both early 40s.
Yeah, but when she was diagnosed the first time, she was in her late 30s, which is so young. And she did go to the I will get to your question, I promise, but I do have to say this. She went to her gynecologist and she said, I have something in my breast and it feels weird. And he felt it and said, oh my gosh, you're too young and it's nothing, you're fine. Right? So
follow your instincts.
Follow your instincts and don't always listen to your doctor. Like if you feel like something,
but when you get that news,
you want to hear that.
You want to believe it, and you want to just go, oh, okay, with anything,
right?
You're not even like your house, your body, but I was saying even like little things with your house where you're like,
do I need
is
to
that
repair
mold?
Yeah,
and then someone comes over and he goes, no, just put a little 409 on it, and it's fine.
I know.
And you're like, so, and everyone has those instincts that we're born with, especially women.
Right.
And
yes,
you got to listen to them, even if you want to believe that everything's fine.
Right. So Molly took his word. And so I say to anybody out there, go get a mammogram. Right. And any doctor that's listening, if your patient ever comes to you and has the slightest bit of concern, send them to get a mammogram. Like, why is that so hard? So to answer your question, yes, we'd been through a lot together. And then when it came down to her diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer, which means that there's no cure, this is most likely going to take your life, she just had kind of an epiphany. And I got to go on that journey with her. So it's amazing, like getting to sort of see her say, all right, I could have an expiration date. What do I want to do? And it all sort of happened in that. Like, it was kind of a scene out of a movie. She was in therapy with her husband. She got the call from her doctor.
So she and the husband had been married for 15 years.
Right.
And so they got married relatively young.
Pretty
then,
young, yeah.
Like mid-20s.
Yeah.
And she hadn't had children yet.
Nope.
Prior to the breast cancer diagnosis, Was that something that they were aspiring to do, or they weren't really that
she
anxious
was
about it?
open to having kids and wanted the choice to have them. But I
Mhm.
think deep down knew she really didn't want to be a mother. But she wanted the choice. But when the
Right.
cancer came the first time, it takes that choice away because once
Yes.
you've had your lymph nodes removed in certain parts of your body, it's just it's not an option anymore. So
Right.
so here she is in this marriage trying to
Now,
figure
how
this
long
out.
had they been in therapy prior to her
Oh, that's a good question. I'm
diagnosis?
not sure. I want to say years. They were like she was a real therapy girl. Like she
Yeah.
really loved going to therapy. And
And was she open as you being her best friend of when she felt the marriage had turned or needed help, or was she always honest throughout the whole thing? Or did she act like everything was great until she started to get real with everything in her life?
that's oh God, you're good. Damn, you're really good. Let me think about this. You know what? You know how you are, how your brain works in your 20s,
Yes.
where you're like, everything is great.
Well,
Isn't it great? Aren't
yeah.
we great?
Yeah.
And then you get into your 30s and you're like, something's not adding up here. So I think that's a little bit of what happened. Like I'd always thought their marriage was really strong and great. I saw them as like these best friends. And then as time has gone on, I think for them, I think she realized like something's not working here and something's not right. And I can't even imagine what it's like to go through a marriage and also be diagnosed and have your partner turn into a caretaker. And then the next thing you know, you're how do you sexualize the person that you're caring for? And how do you sexualize the person that's caring for you, right? So
Well,
that dynamic's weird.
yeah. And I just thought it was like, because I've been married a long time. Half my friends, it's really interesting because like there's times where I like look and I go, oh, isn't that interesting? Like my demographic of like friends from college, it's really interesting because like a third are on their first marriage,
Okay.
a third are on their second, and a third never got married, and one is divorced once, widowed. And that's like 8 of us put together. Like
Wow.
literally,
Right.
we are the demographic of my generation,
Right.
where it's like, the only thing that is not reflective of my sorority sisters is that one isn't gay, and
Right.
there is one I'm praying for, okay, to become a late life lesbian because I'm like, girl. Anyway,
So yes, so
but
they're
I'm
in
just
there.
saying, like,
Right.
why not? Exactly. So
Right.
so in going through with friends and things where marriages have ended and
Yeah.
stuff, it's like I always remember those moments where all of a sudden your friend is like kind of pulls the Band-Aid off and
Right, and
starts to
says,
share
yeah.
with
Yeah.
a best friend or
There
a couple
was that
friends,
moment.
like, it's not good.
Yeah.
And it has been good for a while, and you're like, oh, okay, really? Okay. And then so that's kind of
And
what
you
I was
peel, you
wondering.
peel
Like,
back the layers and you start to get the stories. And I think
yeah.
for a long time, she was so grateful, to him for the caretaking that it got blurry. The lines of like what's happy got blurry. So here they are in couples counseling, and she gets the phone call from her doctor and says, it's terminal. You're metastatic. There's no cure. And she falls to her knees and like they have this horrible moment, but they're still in couples counseling. And that was the moment that she said, like, to herself in her head, my exit strategy is starting. So she ended up moving out, getting her own apartment, which is so crazy because when you are diagnosed as being that sick, then saying, okay, I'm going to leave everything that's safe and comfortable. I'm leaving my home. I'm leaving my cats. I'm leaving my husband, and I'm going to go live in an apartment.
I don't know why
in
the
Sherman
cat
Oaks.
couldn't come, not to be judgy, but
Well,
I have a cat,
It's really
and I
funny.
definitely think I'd want the cat to hang
she
out
brought
with.
the cat with her at first, and
Okay.
it was like too much responsibility. And I was like,
There's
"A
only
cat?"
there's only one pussy I'm focusing on right now, and it's my own.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
yes, so then she started this journey on Tinder and Bumble and putting herself out there, and she didn't get what she wanted out of her 20s, which was what we all do. I think we all.
So
I'm
she
making
met her husband how old?
Oh God, I think in her mid 20s. So when you think of like
Right.
high school, college
There
years,
isn't
that's
enough- yeah.
usually it's when I was like
I mean,
giving it away for free. I mean, it was like
well,
everybody
see,
was.
I was a virgin until I was 27, and I dated a
Oh.
lot of guys.
Okay.
And then I dated like 2 guys, which I boned, and then I met my husband, and I would not recommend that. And I would say
Do you wish you would have boned more?
yes.
Right. So Molly was
So-
like,
and,
how do I bone more?
and had more like kind of risque, crazy experiences, which is probably why, for my listeners that listen to my podcast that have been for years, why I am intrigued by like what I've coined, it's a phrase I've coined called hooker lights, like
Right.
where you're looking for the sugar daddy or just looking to bone, or, you know, these kind of stories where, oh, who cares, and no strings attached, because it was so not, my experience was not the way I was raised, you know,
Yeah.
like I was just telling Kelly, who works with me the other day, I was like, you know, there are certain mothers that like teach their daughters to like marry rich or hook a guy and use your body to do it. And like, there's those kind of moms,
Wow.
you know, like I believe Jackie O's mom was like that from what I've read. There
Oh,
are those
wow.
mothers. And my mom was the opposite.
Right.
She was like,
nope.
stay a virgin until you're married, get an education. Nobody can take that away from you. Always make your own money. And I'm like, fuck, now I'm just tired and work all the time. Like, and then I had
Right.
another mom that was like, let me show you how you get free dry cleaning, girl. Like, so it's just
Wow.
interesting,
Yeah.
like how, and you kind of look back at your life, you're like, okay, so, you know, your friend meeting her husband young, falling in love, dating him probably the appropriate amount of time before you get engaged, getting married, and not having on that, and then kind of being like, yeah, I can totally see it. It's like, I think sometimes when you're faced with something like a terminal illness or whatever, it either brings you and your significant other significantly closer. And it's the
Yes.
most beautiful thing that anyone's ever witnessed,
Right.
and blah, blah, blah.
Or
And then it's rare. Like, I always remember, oh my God, who is the singer? Melissa Etheridge.
yeah.
So Melissa Etheridge, she's on her third marriage. And, but her first marriage was with this woman. And I think they had those two kids
Yeah.
from, what's
From
his name?
yeah,
From the
the
guy with
the
the long
band.
hair.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
yes.
Why can't I think of the band's name?
Anyway, Melissa Etheridge recovered from cancer.
Crosby.
Crosby.
Thank you.
Yes. And right after that, like I believe from my memory, Juicy Scoop history, is she got rid of her wife, or she and her wife broke up. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like, you know, it's kind of like, well, you know, yeah, I lived and I survived. And you know what? I'm really not that into you.
Yeah, and
Like, I'm
illness
really
can
not
make
that
or
into
break
you.
a
So
relationship. Yeah.
She didn't, like, they didn't leave till she was like in recovery. But I also
Right.
think it's like, okay, well, I really don't want to waste any more time now in something that is not fulfilling.
Right.
Right.
Because when you're faced with the idea of not being here anymore, all of a sudden the time that you do have just sort of, it gets reframed. It gets spun around in a different way in your brain. And for Molly, she had never gotten those sexual experiences and that way of just like going out and dating like a madwoman. She didn't get that experience. So when she
And not to be harsh, but I guess she doesn't have the typical fear that other women have of I'm going to be murdered.
She
Because
said
she's
to
like,
me,
I'm going to
she go-
die
I
anyway.
swear to
So
God.
if I
Yes.
meet a serial killer, well, at least.
I would always say to her, like, please text me. And she's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to chop me up into little pieces? And I was like, Molly, you can't say that. She's like, honestly, really, it's fine. Like, I have gone through cancer. I've gone through chemo. I am terminal.
Like,
What's
I
the
really
worst that's
don't
going to
give
happen?
a fuck. Like,
I know.
she's the true zero fucks.
Yeah, 0 fucks, yes. And what I loved about it was that, think about it, she had both of her breasts removed. She had her
But
ability to,
didn't she have her breasts
she had
reconstructed?
reconstructed, yes. In
Okay,
fact,
so
I
that
went.
would help with your
Right, but
confidence,
think
I would
about
think.
like all of
No, I
like
know
the parts
that's-
of you taken
yes,
away that
yes.
make you feel, and she was really into reclaiming, and so she had these perfect breasts, like they were beautiful, and she always would say things like, "Please do not think this is about getting reconstruction. Like this is the worst way to get reconstruction is to have breast cancer."
Right.
I'm not,
But the plus
they
side
were
is that
amazing.
my titties look good in lingerie.
Right,
And
exactly.
I'm trying to get
And
laid.
she just started owning her physicality and her body in a way that it was it's so inspiring to me. So she went for it. Her stories were so interesting. We'd go to lunch and she'd say, "You're not going to believe what happened last night." And I was like, "Why are you not writing this down?" So we started writing it down. We started talking about it, and they were like, "We have to make a podcast about it." And they're just fascinating. And I said, "What is it about doing this that makes you feel so good?" And she's like, "It's the antithesis to death. It is like at every funeral scene in a movie, the woman who loses her husband or her boyfriend or her dad wants to immediately just fuck somebody." Oh, can I say that?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Wants to immediately fuck someone at the funeral. Like our bodies thrive
Oh my
on
God,
that.
do you remember that scene where Halle Berry played, oh God, she played the mother of this heavy boy that was like walking down the street, and she played like a poor woman, even though she's gorgeous and had perfect teeth, but whatever. She was playing a poor woman, and her son was kind of heavy, and he was like walking down in a poor neighborhood, and he was like a kid, like 10, and he got hit by a car. And that night she's with Billy Bob Thornton. It was like
yes,
she won the
what is
Oscar.
this? Yeah,
she
yeah,
won
yeah,
the
what is
Oscar
this?
for it.
I'm the worst.
And then she was like, he used to, and she's like doing this thing where like he's so fat. And then anyway, she just like gets on all fours and is like, screw me right now. And it was like the night that her son died. And like I have heard that where that happens with couples or whatever. So I think the most tragic thing I can't imagine, but thank God I have never been there. But
The sex and death are very linked. I mean, it's all very linked together if you dig really
and her
deep.
husband, what I got from the first episode is like the husband, because they had, not been on a great path, hadn't, their sex life had suffered over the years leading to this point of being in therapy. He also was like, I'm fine. Like, I really don't care. And a lot of people get like that too, like in a marriage where they're like, honestly, if you had an affair, like, as long as you're
really okay,
it makes
with
you nicer.
The
like
parts
really,
of it, right? Oh my God, he was like, go for the digital stuff, and that's where it started, and then it
so
moved
digital
on
stuff
from
meaning
there.
like just send like sexy photos to yourself or to each other, and
yeah.
And then when she started meeting these people, would she reveal to those people that she was sick?
No, she was very private. She's very
why
private
would
about
you?
her cancer.
And then did any of these encounters? Now, did she go for like different types? Like, I've only dated a white guy, so let me have a black guy. Let me have an Asian guy.
Let's go for it. She tried everything. She had never been with a woman, and she went on a date. Her first date was with a couple. She was like, "Oh, let's just go for it."
Throuple, I love it.
So she met a couple.
Yeah.
Wasn't attracted to them at all. I think went to the bathroom, made out with the woman a little bit, showed lingerie, and was like, "Ooh," she didn't even like use tongue or anything. Like so non-sensual. Like, went back to the bar and was like, "Hey, you guys, I'm so turned on right now. Like,
but I'm dying soon, and I cannot waste any more time with an unattractive throuple."
So by the time that she had finished that date, she had been texting sort of under the table another guy, sexy pics, and had another date lined up like 5 minutes from then.
And then did she also just not care about like venereal diseases and stuff? Because like, who cares?
Well, I think like, look at you.
Like, who needs condoms? And we got to test each other.
I think she was a little. I think there was still concern.
Like my favorite scene. Oh my God! And one of my favorite movies. I talk about this all the time. Is Unfaithful. And you remember the scene?
Yes, with Diane Lane.
Yes.
Oh my God.
When she's goes into the coffee shop and sees like the moms from school, and then her lover walks in and like winks at her, and so then she goes to the bathroom and they fuck in the bathroom
Yes,
stall.
I do remember that
Did your
scene.
friend do that?
Yes.
Oh, love that.
Look at your face. You really are excited by that.
Well,
okay,
hey, at least I know
let me
if
ask
anything happens to me, that's the route I'm going.
What? Like, everybody's dying for something. Some people are dying for love. Some people dying for children. Some people are dying for more adventure. Like, but Molly really dying for sex really encapsulates. But the sex led to all this other self-discovery. Because if you think about it, sex leads you sometimes, especially when you're older and wiser, leads you to places within yourself.
Well, also
right?
it's like, and there's a
much.
time when it's like you're not using the sex to get pregnant. You're not using the sex to get a guy interested in you, or to keep a guy, or to get him to marry you. And it's like there's or to save your marriage. Like you're really just boning to bone.
Yeah, and she found some real interesting fetishes, guys
Like
that
what?
have fetishes.
Tell me some fetishes.
I don't want to give too many away, but I can tell you one night I went to her apartment after one of her evenings, which she dates at all hours. Like when I say like 6 a.m. to like midnight, whatever days, breakfast
Now,
days,
did her
lunch days.
cooch ever get exhausted?
It's funny you say that, but a lot of this didn't involve. It didn't always have to involve vaginal sex.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot
Did she try anal for the first time, or was she into that but prior?
I think she was a little afraid of that. I don't think she went for the anal, but I think she tried like hand jobs with her feet.
Oh.
Guys that had foot fetishes.
Yeah.
Guys that were into dressing up. costumes, guys that just wanted to
Wait,
come and
like
be kicked in the nuts.
she would get in the costume, or they would come looking in like wearing like a Diane von Furstenberg dress, and she'd
Both.
be.
Yes.
That would so not turn me on. If some dude showed up dressed as a woman, I'd be like, get the hell out.
Molly is one of those people that is like the least judgmental. Like whenever I call her and I say things like, you know, you're not gonna believe what happened. This is so dumb. She'll be like, well, have you thought about it like this? Like she's one of those people that can like reframe in a second. So
Okay.
not judgy. Me, super judgy. Like she'd tell me stories and I'd be like, what the are you joking? And she'd be like, well, he probably just was working out some things from his childhood. She always had a way of spinning it. So she was very open,
Yeah.
very willing. And I love learning so much through these experiences because right when I have a guy pegged for exactly who I think he is, like he's this guy, this is what he wants, he's out for himself, then something happens and I'm like, oh, he really is just kind of a wounded soul figuring out his own sexual journey.
You mean in your own life, or you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about
the
I'm talking
the
about
guys
Molly's,
that
like
she
the
was
golly.
dating.
Yeah, those guys.
Okay, so she did a couple fetishes. She had some people wear some dresses to her house. Okay. Did she ever then find another couple? Like, did she ever get into the threesome or
No, she wasn't
lesbian?
into
Just
that.
tried it, didn't like
Yeah,
it.
She didn't like it.
What were some other things?
She did find,
Yeah.
oddly, a lot of guys that were tied into the cancer were like lost a mother from cancer, lost a wife from cancer, and were sort of didn't know that Molly has cancer, but also like would talk about it a lot, and she knew a lot about it. So there was this weird cancer connection.
Right.
And then one guy, I think she did finally reveal that that she had cancer, and he would just want to pick her up and drive and hold her hand. She was like, this is the weirdest thing in the whole world. Like, he just wants to be with me because in a weird way, it made him feel closer to the person that he had lost to cancer. It was very layered.
So when she had this time to like get her groove on, was she not? So at that time, she didn't have to go to like chemo or anything where she'd be like put out for days.
She
with
was,
nausea.
but there were times when she was put out for days. She was going through radiation therapy.
Oh, okay.
There were days. You know, it's interesting, Heather, because some days I would go to her house and I'd be like, oh my God, you look fine. You look healthy. You look amazing. And other days, bathroom floor wiped out.
Right.
But the dating was really tiring for her because
I
she was exhausted.
When I was single, I was always like, dating is a second job. If you really want to like treat it like, if you're really in the game and you really are going to put yourself out there, you know, it's a second job. It's a Tuesday night and you're like, I really don't want to meet this dude at 7. But I'd be like, Heather, you're 27. You're not going to like this forever. Get out of this bed,
Yeah.
you know, and you have to go. And so, yeah, it is because you're also on, you know, even like for me who's doing podcasts and stand up and stuff, there's times like when I do 2 shows at night, you know, people or a relative will be like, can I take you to lunch? And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just can't be on for 2 hours.
I gotta
I have to be
unplug.
on for 7 tonight.
Right.
Like I got, and I know if I'm put in a situation, I will be a delightfully entertaining person. And now I'm like talking for another 2 hours.
Right.
And so of course, even whether you're flirting at a restaurant or actually doing the sex act, which essentially is a form of cardio, you would be exhausted.
Oh my God, I love you. Yeah, she did a lot of cardio. She was really in good shape. She went for it. Like, really went for it. And if the
So
date-
she was like discovering what? Like toys,
toys,
S&M.
really good at, you know, she enjoys, she said, like,
Did she ever get to beat up a guy or
Yes.
hit him around?
So there was one, and in fact, we talk about it in one of the episodes. These fetishes that are just, you wouldn't even think of them as fetishes. You think of them as just, I don't know what you think of them. But one guy came over and just said, I just want you to kick me in the nuts as hard as you possibly can over and over again. And I'm like, I can't think of anything more counterintuitive to a hard on, right? Like, how does that even work? But then you learn about fetish. I learned so much from her. You learn about fetishes, where they come from, what they do. A lot of it is just having like spank bank material for later. Like you may not get off in the actual moment, but they use it for later. I know. Look at your face right now. Listen,
I can't
you are the me.
understand
Like when I'm
that-
talking to Molly,
yeah.
this is how you're acting like how I act. Now I'm acting
See,
how
here's the
Molly
thing.
acts. Yeah.
If I ever go down this journey for whatever reason,
Would
you know,
Like, would you ever want to just enjoy?
not like this.
No.
Not like Because I've talked to a lot of people that, some are in the sex industry, whether they're S&M people, whatever, and I'm interested in it. But no, what I'd really like is just a lot of dates with age appropriate, maybe slightly younger
Okay.
men in good outfits,
Okay.
like a cologne. And then I'd like to have like a meal and some
You
flirty.
are living on the edge.
And then
Heather.
I'd like a hand down my back. And then maybe and then maybe make out and sex and stuff.
Okay.
But I don't want any weird,
Okay.
I think that'll be harder for me to find. Hi, I'm just looking for someone
I think it
making
would.
6 figures that would like to meet me at the Four Seasons in Westlake tonight and pay for my meal.
They're like,
Touch the small of my back, flip my hair, maybe kiss my neck, and then I'm good. Actually, I don't even want. Actually, I
Right?
don't think I need the boning. I just think
Right.
I want the dating.
okay. Well, and for her, there was some of that. Like sometimes dates just became friends. Sometimes dates became just good conversation, and sometimes it went. I mean, straight to first thing in the text exchange is sexy text messaging,
Right.
sexy dick pics. Like sometimes it just went straight there, and sometimes it was.
And she's like, "Hey, I'm fine cutting to the chase."
Fine, cutting to the chase. Guys that wanted to be her quote unquote sex slave, like that world was fascinating to me. Figuring that one out, that one baffled
Wait,
me.
but you didn't answer my question.
Oh, wait, what was your question?
Did the cooch ever get tired and you decided to take a break, like in The
Yes.
Bachelorette, like how they give them a day off in between the fantasy suites to like douche and just like lift up their legs?
First of all, I didn't know that happened in The
Well,
Bachelorette, so thank you.
I would assume you have a
Right?
day
Like,
in
take a break.
between.
right
You have a
to
day in
like,
between the thing to just
I never put that together.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
And also, when you have fresh dick, is how I like to describe it. You're often very susceptible to yeast infections.
Okay.
Or is it not yeast infection? It's
UTI.
UTI.
I'm acting like
Sorry,
I don't know
not
what you're
yeast.
talking about. I'm like,
UTI is a direct result of
Of-
new dick. In
It-
my
got it.
when I got my doctorate, that's what I learned. Like it's so weird if like you got like more men should kind of know that.
That's interesting.
Like
I
if their
never put
wife,
that
I
together.
can't wait to get the emails. I got a UTI after 15
Yeah.
years. Of marriage." Okay, my understanding is like, it's usually when it's like a new
New.
situation,
break
or
in
you're
between.
having it an enormous amount of time, like more times
She
than
took
normal.
breaks. She for sure let everything rest. Plus, her health sort of dictated, and use the word dictate, that her health sort of dictated where she was in the ebb and flow of being able. But she did cram a lot in. Like if she was having, like if she would do a medication,
And
she
she's
knew.
feeling good, yeah.
And she knew she had 3 or 4 days of feeling good before she was going to be wiped out.
Before
she
nausea, yeah, and stuff.
makes the most of those 3 days like hard. Like
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 dates. Not always ending in sex, but open to it. Very open to it.
Now, what about paying on the date? Because what does she care how much money she has left? Or did she insist that the dude pay?
Ooh, that. Oh my God, you're good. I didn't even think
well,
of
I'm
this.
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
not her best friend.
Right. I'm a horrible best friend.
Yeah, we might have had 12
Well, what?
episodes. Not
You
just
know,
6.
And it's Molly. Because she was so sick and so ill, she didn't eat much. So she was
a cheap date.
She was a very cheap date, and she doesn't drink.
Oh, she doesn't even
She's not a drinker.
drink.
So I don't even think that even came into the realm of her thinking. She was probably like, let's just meet. I'll
'Cause
have a
with
club soda
my-
with lime.
With my dying fantasy, it's a
Right.
lot of meals.
Right.
A lot of meals at nice
What
places.
would be your last meal? Like
it's one of my
Jesus on
favorite
his
things to
last
talk
supper.
about.
Are you?
Yes.
What is your last meal?
It's the Stanley's Amy's Chinese chicken
Oh my
salad.
God, I love that chicken. What about the grilled artichoke there?
That's my appetizer on
Shut
death row.
up!
No, I'm serious. I've like said this on the show like 4 times.
Okay.
And then we go over to Cheesecake Factory. We get the avocado, not from the skinny menu, the fried avocado rolls.
Haven't had those. I'm gonna have to
Well,
indulge.
they lost popularity once they had to put the calories down.
Oh.
But they have a dip that's to die for.
Okay.
And it's just like a fried egg roll, but just with like avocado guac in it, and then like this sweet dip.
Okay.
Then I go for a butternut sage squash pasta,
Yeah. Yeah.
like a ravioli type of thing.
All right. I like that.
And then if there's still room before I
Jeez.
explode on the electric chair,
Oh, that's how you're gonna go. The
I
electric chair?
go for a fillet with like a truffle butter,
Okay.
sizzling hot, medium rare plus.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
After
So
your
that-
artichoke, what's yours other items?
there is which is any red
We
wine.
can, okay.
Like
yeah.
I
Oh
could,
yeah.
any kind. I don't
Okay.
care, good, bad, whatever. And then I go straight to dessert. Like I want an appetizer, skip the meal, and then I double up on dessert. And it's
But
very
you're dying, so why not just have?
that's true. But
What's your favorite dessert?
okay, anything chocolate with raspberry sauce and like the ice cream, so it melts into the chocolate. Like
Okay.
it becomes like
I
almost
forgot
a
to
soup.
mention my favorite, the
Oh.
dessert that we also have to go to before.
Yeah.
It's Roy's, the chocolate. Have you ever been to Roy's, the
no.
chocolate souffle?
Okay, that's one of my favorites.
So that's
Just
like
any
hot in
chocolate
the day, and
souffle.
you have to
Yeah.
order it before you get the other. You got to order
Oh,
it when
so
you order your food.
okay.
Otherwise, they can't accommodate
Oh
you.
my god, we could have our last supper together could be really epic.
I mean,
God
it's
willing
too
that we-
bad that eating wasn't. That's the bummer. Is if you are sick, you're
Mhm.
rarely,
Yeah, you don't
hungry.
really want to eat, and she
and that's when you should.
right. Well, she made up for her meals with sexual
With dick.
activity. So
All right. Now, did she like giving
she
blowjobs?
loved blowjobs.
And did she like giving blowjobs prior to her illness?
Yes, she did, but she
So
doubled
with
down.
the husband, she would still give him blowjobs, or he didn't want him anymore as their
You know,
relationship
I think
deteriorated.
their relationship became more of like just friends. They had this beautiful like connection, but I don't think there was much going on in the bedroom.
So
Yeah.
then when she got back into the blowjobs, why
Yeah.
does someone love giving a blowjob?
You
so
know,
much?
I been friends with her for over 20 something years, and I was always like, why? I have to really like someone to want to do that to them, but like she just enjoys it. I don't know. I don't know if it's
I have to imagine I'm like in a porno or something. I have to imagine like I have to like yeah.
yeah. I mean, if
Some
you
people love doing it. Some people feel like it's it's like making a salad for your spouse or making their bed. Like it's something that you're obligated to do and you should do. And that's another thing I believe is taught by a mother, which my mother never got into
to
blowjobs.
give you blowjobs.
Yeah, like I mean, I think there's moms that just like do it. It's 3 minutes out of your life or whatever, 10 minutes out of your life
yeah.
a day or every other day, and just think about how happy that'd make him. And that's just never been my philosophy in life. But sometimes I'm like, maybe I should try
Yeah,
that.
maybe you should. Just try it. Listen, try it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Let me know how it goes.
And did she love people going down on her?
She did. She liked that. She was very open to sort of meeting people.
So wait, we didn't got that. Did she
Okay,
do the
wait.
threesomes? Did you get back into threesomes?
No,
after-
she didn't. Yeah, I said she just wasn't really it wasn't her thing.
What about two dudes? That's one I think I'd maybe be down for.
She did
Especially
not,
if one was also rubbing my shoulders at the same time.
right? Yeah. No, yeah, I would like
But I guess
that.
essentially, if you're having two dudes, it's supposed to be like double.
She didn't
P.
do that. She didn't
Okay.
do the two dudes. She did stuff with urine.
Speaking of two dudes, I just
What?
had a friend tell me that she had an opportunity
Okay.
on two occasions where she was one time she was in Europe traveling alone, and it was like maybe a decade prior, like she was in her 30s, and two hot Italians were like wanted to have a threesome with her, and she was just like, she's still trolling for a husband.
Okay.
She's still
I don't know what I would do with
sees
two
herself
penises.
as like,
right.
that is just too much. That is just too hoary, And then on another occasion, she was with her boyfriend who was just being awful and weird. It was towards the end of the relationship. And she took off. They were like at this resort, and she took off and she was hanging out with these other two guys. And they wanted to have a threesome with her,
Wow.
and she turned it down.
What?
And let me just tell you, she regrets both of those decisions immensely. We
right?
just talked about this a couple weeks
That's
ago.
so funny.
And she's like, what was I thinking? Like now, I mean, she's being funny, but it's like now she's older. I don't know that that people will be asking as often as they.
If they were when we were, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, she never did two dudes. I don't think, I don't know what I would do with two penises. What would you do with two penises? Like honestly,
I mean, I think it is one in your mouth and one there. Or if you're
Okay.
really crazy, I guess.
Whoa.
Well, like the porno is like, double P. So it's like one in the,
Okay.
one in the,
Yeah, don't even say what you're gonna say.
yeah, one in each thing.
Okay.
But I think it would just be like, I think it would be just more just like arms and chests, two of them around me.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Is what I would
that's
be
a lot.
into.
I mean, listen, I've been with the same person for 10 years, and I honestly super attracted to him still. I don't know what happens,
That's
but
great.
I think he's like delicious. So the idea of being with him and having sex with him, amazing. But as soon as you start bringing strange up in the mix,
Yeah.
I'm like, where's that
But
been?
you obviously loved hearing these stories.
These stories to me, I felt like I was eating popcorn every time she was. Well, we'd go to lunch and they'd be like 6-hour lunches because I'd be like, and then what? And what did it look like? And how? And but lots of pictures. I had lots of photos.
Were you ever, as a very good friend, a little grossed out?
Oh yes, yes. The urine thing grossed me out.
What's the urine thing? She got peed on,
Mm-hmm.
and she liked that, or she just tried it?
No, she.
Now, did she get peed on in a shower, or like,
Okay.
or you had to change your sheets?
This
after?
is actually in the podcast. So if you're interested in pee play, there's definitely a talk about that. It is. It started off as like just a little her doing the urinating. She didn't want to be urinated on, but her doing a little bit of the urinating, and then sort of taking it into the shower and exploring that way. And and some of these guys are into sort of being dominated in some ways, like feeling like they're submissive to the woman and just
And I
pee
guess
on me.
if that's
and-
what they ask you to do, and you're pleasing them, then that could
What-
be sexually satisfying to you. That you're pleasing this person so much by doing something that they're
Yeah,
asking.
and she did tell me, she was like, it's just fun, just exploring and seeing. She's
But
like,
never,
sex is
but
fun,
never
but
number two.
No.
Thank God.
she drew the line. She drew the line at poop play, which I was like, "Ugh." When she brought up the pee stuff, I was like, "Ugh," and I was very judging. She was like, listen, like
Now,
it's
when
just-
she was separated from the husband and doing all this, so they didn't bother to go through divorce proceedings. She just was like, "What does it matter?"
yeah, they were legally separated, and I think, I think. They
And did
didn't-
he? Did she keep in touch with him throughout this time?
Yeah, they definitely had communication, but it was very.
And did
distant.
anybody else in her life besides you? Like, did her parents know or anything that she was like getting her groove
I
on?
don't really think anybody. Wait, that she was going through like the sexual awakening part.
Yeah.
I don't think it was really open. Molly's very private about her cancer.
Mhm.
Like, went through it for a long time without telling anybody she had it. Didn't tell a lot of people that she went through the double mastectomy. Didn't tell a lot of people. She's very private about it. She didn't want to be
Yeah, some people are
identified
very-
with cancer. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I've had friends that I'm not that close to, and were diagnosed and immediately like told everybody, and it was like was one of my friends. Thank God it was not even like stage 1,
Mhm.
and she was just like, "I want you guys to know." And she wasn't looking for sympathy or anything, but she was like just really like open and honest and wanted that support, which is great. And then you have people that really are not, further along or in a more dire situation. And it's interesting that they make the choice not to share it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she made it.
I mean,
she was
everybody
very
has their
clear.
own thing. Or
I mean, I think a few people knew, like, of course, her family members, and I know that my mom knew, and people knew, but like, it wasn't one of those things that, like, when we'd go to a party, that everyone go, "Oh, Molly's here. We should see how she's doing." It was just, "Oh, Molly's here." Like,
yeah.
so when she navigates that journey for herself, she was very conscientious of how she was sort of going to be seen in the world. And so when she decided to come out and tell everybody she had cancer, that was years after her terminal diagnosis. So she was very, very thoughtful about how she navigated this. And a lot of her sexual partners, even though she had scars under her breast and sometimes a port in her arm for the chemo, like an actual little thing
Mhm.
under the skin, and sometimes hair missing in certain parts, a lot of these guys just didn't notice, because they're like, they are one track
They're
mind.
like,
They
they're
come
happy.
in,
Yeah,
and-
she's down to fuck. Yeah.
and- exactly. And they're finally finding this woman online who's essentially a stranger who's so open and willing to hearing about their fetishes and not judging them. And some of them had relationships that, that they were going out on the side. Some of them
Yeah.
were just single guys that she went for it. Like, she was like, I am going to.
So was she going for guys that she was attracted to, or just trying all different types, like the UN or whatever?
I think both. I think she was just trying to go for whatever, but I think she definitely gravitated towards guys that are naturally her type. But she definitely was at least like open, like, let's see where this goes. I've never been with a guy of this ethnicity.
Did she ever go for someone that was a little person?
There was a guy, the tickle fetish situation, and he did show up. And in his photos, he looked really hot. And when she looked out the peephole, she couldn't see his head. So she opened the door, and I think he was much shorter than she anticipated. But I don't think an actual little person.
You don't think he was like legally a little person?
I don't think so. I don't think he had gotten his.
But she
card.
still went for it. She was still like, well, you're here, and
So
I've got a window.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. So yeah, I wouldn't say a little person, but someone that was much shorter than.
Did she ever have like a bad, like it wasn't going, she wasn't feeling it, she wasn't getting excited, and she was like, I'm cutting it short. I don't care that I hurt this person's feelings.
Yeah, she had. It's interesting because she said to me once, like the old me, the pre-cancer me, would have been a people pleaser, and I don't want to hurt his feelings, and how do I get out of this? But the giving less fucks thing.
Yeah.
Definitely played into this, and the less fucks she gave, the more guys that would like come to her. So it was just this interesting experiment of like, when you ignore the puppy, they kind of want to be. And so as soon as you give the puppy attention, he's like, get away. So this thing with the guys, they just kept coming and coming. The more that she didn't give a shit about it, it was just it was an interesting thing to kind of observe. But there were times that a guy would come over and they'd get going, and then she'd get really ill, and she'd start to feel sick, and she'd have to come up with an excuse or get herself out of it. There were very few guys that she actually exposed the cancer, like told that she had cancer. There were like
so none of them she really fell for.
I think there were a couple that were potential, and I think there was one. There were actually two guys in particular that I felt like she could have had relationships with, but it just didn't. It didn't pan out. Yeah, but there were a couple in there. And I think through this process, starting to realize what you're trying to get out of the sex. Like, we all have to go through that process, right?
Yeah.
Like, not all of us, but some of us go, okay, we're going to sexually explore, find out what we like, and then dig in. Well, Molly, for reasons that we can talk about in the podcast, she didn't get that in her youth. So now it was her time to go to bat and be like, I'm going to redo this all over again. And by, I think, the end of some of this sexual journey, I think she kind of realized, like, I kind of want somebody to share, my life with. And it's really interesting how that turns out.
Well, Nikki, I'm really glad to see you again. I'm
thanks.
excited for this. This is by Wondery, and it's called Dying for Sex, and it's available on February 12th, but we're going to play you some of it right now.
Great.
So
Thanks.
enjoy this. Very juicy. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.